Welcome back. It's time for another demo. And in this demo, what I want to do is I want to create a problem. I want to show you, for example, what happens when you have issues in a vSAN cluster. In particular, I want to show you the existence of apps and components. Now let's take a look at what I currently have. Right now I have 3 virtual machines. The first one is RAID 5. And if you take a look, you can confirm this by looking at the summary page. By scrolling down, you can see this one is RAID 5. The other 2 are using the default policy. They're two-way mirrors. Once again, let's take a look. There it is. And again, here's number 3. Once again, this should be a two-way mirror. It should be using the vSAN default storage policy. So let's concentrate on the first VM. If you take a look, right now, all of the components are going to be healthy. Let's take a look. I'm going to select that VM. I'm going to go to the monitor tab and I'm going to go to physical disk placement. You can see this virtual machine has 3 objects. Why 3? The first one is the VM home namespace object. That is the folder with the metadata files. The next one is the disk object. And because it's running, the third one is the swap object. RAID 5 requires 4 hosts. That's why you see 4 components. And once again, all of them are currently active. Now, what I'm going to do next is I am going to go to a machine and I am going to pick one randomly. So take a look. I'm going to pick host number 4. Remember, it doesn't matter which one I pick because all of them are being used by SAVM01. And I'm going to type ESXCLI network NIC list. Now this will show me that this host has 4 NICs. Remember, VMNIC3 is the one being used by vSAN. And you can see that this is currently up. So let's take a look at what happens if I type ESXCLI followed by network NIC down -N VMNIC3. This is the same thing as going to that machine and removing the network cable from that server. Now let's take a look at the GUI. In no time whatsoever, you expect to see a combination of warnings and errors. Remember, host 4 now is isolated. Host 1 can see 2 and 3, but again, the first 3 cannot see 4 and vice versa. So what's going to happen is the very first host is going to be able to see, for example, 150 gigs instead of 200 gigs. Because remember, the first, second, and third can talk to each other. Each of them has a 50 gig capacity disk. 50 gigs times 3 is 150 gigs. Now, the one that is isolated, however, can only see his disk group. Therefore, he should be able to see only 50 gigs. And if you take a look, I am going to do a refresh. Now, I expect to have 1 absent component for each object, just like you see here. Now, the failure that I just generated potentially also affected other VMs. Let's take a look. When it comes to the second VM, if I take a look, notice none of the objects here were affected by that. Maybe I got lucky. And when it comes to number 3, let's take a look. This one once again has apparently everything active. So, how do I approach this problem? What you want to do here is you want to use always Skyline Health. This, again, is going to be your best friend when it comes to troubleshooting. So if you take a look, if you select the cluster, right off the bat, I can see all sorts of problems. I can see that my network failure affected different objects, including the StatsDB object, which is the object for the performance service. Now, I am going to go to the monitor tab and I'm going to scroll down. If I click on Skyline Health, here notice I can see immediately that I have, again, different types of problems. So, for example, here I can see that I have an issue when it comes to the object for the performance service. Once again, if you take a look here, you can see how many objects were affected by this. And again, I could also see that I have network-related problems. So in this case, the problem is the network that affected the objects. So to fix that, what I want to do is I want to up the NIC again. To do that, I'm going to run ESXCLI network NIC up minus NVMe3. And if you take a look, I'm going to type ESXCLI network NIC list. All of them should be up. And then I can go back to the GUI, back to the vSphere client. I'm going to do a retest. And again, you're going to notice that everything goes back to normal. Notice the warnings and errors begin to disappear from everywhere. This again will take a few more seconds. I could always clean this up manually if needed. Never mind, notice it beat me to the punch. And if you take a look at the virtual machine, the one that was affected by this, notice everything should be once again active. That concludes the first demo. Thank you guys.